your day is going great and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So if you haven't watched my other videos, here's a recap of what you missed. A couple weeks ago I asked my friends on social media what their favorite shows were when they were kids, took the most popular answers, and decided to sew swimsuits based off of them. Today, as you have hopefully guessed from the title, is Hannah Montana! I loved Hannah Montana as a kid and I am so excited to sew this, although I'm kind of torn between if I want to do pink or purple, so maybe I'll just do the best of both worlds and have both. Without further ado, let's get to sewing. As with any sewing project, let's begin with a sketch. Then I grabbed a top for the guide. I'm not in love with this top, so instead of cutting it exactly how it is, I'm going to cut it so that it ties at the front and wraps around the back. And definitely be sure to leave more seam allowance than I did because it came out way smaller than I expected. So see how I'm just cutting around the triangle, and instead of cutting the other triangle, I'm cutting out a tie. Once you get kind of a basic shape cut out, you'll want to take some time to play with your dart so that you can match it on the other side. And before you do that, I just use a rotary cutter to smooth out my edges. Now I'm just playing with the darts. Sorry. And once I am happy with it, I will cut off the excess so that my piece is ready to be sewn. But then I'm going to cut 4 more identical pieces, 2 of lining and then 1 more for the other side. So that your straps are sparkly on both sides when you tie them, I'm cutting out an extra bit in gold fabric instead of using the lining. For the lining, I'm using a white fabric, but if I were to make a suggestion, I would suggest doing it in a skin color because white, if you make a mistake, it contrasts a lot more than a skin color would. Here you can kind of see what I was talking about with the tie a little bit more. Instead of doing the white liner for the tie, I'm going to use gold, and I don't remember why I cut ties on the lining, but I'm going to sew the gold fabric to the lining instead and use that because I think it'll look a bit more finished and clean when it's all tied together. So just quickly attach those 2 pieces together and you're ready to move on to sewing your darts. I'm using my sewing machine for the darts because you probably shouldn't use a serger for them. That is just a mess. I'm using a zigzag stitch, back stitching at the beginning, and then I'm going to not back stitch at the end and just tie it off. If you've never made a dart before, I would suggest looking up some tutorials, or I'm always happy to answer questions. Then I move on to the straps. I made really thin ones, which, youch, those were hard. But then I'm just going to sandwich them between my lining layer and my fashion fabric layer, hiding them inside so that we can turn everything inside out. They will be perfectly attached. So just pin and sew around the perimeter and make sure to leave a space open so that you can turn everything inside out. I would recommend doing the space where it's going to connect to your next panel. I'm using my serger to connect everything together so that nothing will come apart and it will last for a really long time. However, the serger takes off quite a bit of seam allowance, so proceed with caution. Then I'm going back to the reference swimsuit and cutting out the next panel. This is where you would attach the opening on the swimsuit that I was talking about. And same dealio here, you're going to want to cut 2 of fashion fabric and then 2 of lining. Then to see kind of how everything's going, I put everything on my mannequin. I do this a lot while I'm sewing just to double check to see if everything's fitting okay and how everything lines up. I'm also using it to play with strap placement. I decided to only attach the outer layers of fabric together so that if I wanted to put a cup or anything inside, it would be easy for me to access it. For the back band, I take a piece of fabric that's about 2 inches wide, fold it in half and make a tube out of it. Then I attach it to the 2 side panels and spaghetti straps. To finish it all off, I use a top stitch with metallic gold thread. And yippee skippy doodle, the top's all done! I think it looks really good, especially on the mannequin because she's slightly different than me. Now to begin on the bottoms, I take a swimsuit that ties on the side for easier tracing. I use that as a guide and cut it all out. Make sure to add more seam allowance as I have mentioned. I use my rotary cutter and cut 1 out of pink and 1 out of purple. This is going to make it so we can reverse the suit, or if you're not trying to make a reversible suit, just cut 1 layer out of lining. For the ties, cut 4 pink and 4 purple, and we're going to match them together later so that they're reversible too. Sew the bottom piece right sides together, but make sure to leave a part open so we can flip it inside out. Take the ties and do the same thing. Match pink to purple, sew them right sides together, and flip them inside out. Okay, so just a pop in for the bottoms. Right now they should look like this. Hopefully this will work. I took the loops and then just like folded in 1/4 of the edge on the raw edge so that when I top stitch them together there won't be any raw edges sticking out. And then we'll just be able to tie it on and we are done with Hannah Montana. Also, I'm using a different bobbin color thread than my top thread, so I'll be using pink in the bobbin and purple in the top, so that the pink I will have face down and the purple will go on top, so that I won't have to deal with it being super obvious on either side. Top stitch time, and then we are all done. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed viewing it as much as I did making it. Final thoughts on this project. My biggest mistake came from the seam allowance. I definitely didn't give myself enough leeway when I was making this suit, but mistakes are completely okay, especially when you're sewing, and they help us learn. If you can learn from my mistakes, that's even better. But this is the first swimsuit I've ever made, so when I made the Avatar swimsuit after this, I learned from my seam allowance mistakes and was able to make that suit fit better, and hopefully in this next suit, I will learn from the mistakes of this swimsuit and the Avatar one and make this one even better. Quick challenge in the comments, do you think you can guess what TV show this one's based off of? I overall still love the design of the suit. I think the ties are really fun and the colors work super well together, but it's just a wee bit too small for me, so it'll probably live on my mannequin. Right, well, it's really late right now, and I think I'm gonna go to bed, so I love y'all and hope you are doing well.